With Big 12 Media Days coming up next week, the Locked On Podcast Network dropped their Big 12 preseason polls. Nick and I are going to break it down and talk about exactly where both Iowa State and Kansas State sit and if we like those chances. This is Farmageddon Friday.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Boom, Nick, hit me with that beat. It's a Locked On College Crossover here, Locked On Kansas State, Locked On Cyclones. I'm Christian Rao here with Nick Maravitz, bringing you Farmageddon Friday, talking about the greatest rivalry, at least in the Big 12. Okay, I only think you guys say at least in the Big 12 of college sports. We're digging into some interesting stuff today. We're going to talk Big 12 preseason rankings, preseason poll. Wait a minute. I thought you said there wasn't one. The Locked On Podcast Network has you covered. And of course, we're going to dig into our continuing position group conversation when it comes to Farmageddon Friday, week 0, August 23rd, getting closer and closer. July 4th, make sure that you left out your medium rare steak and your draft beer for Hulk Hogan. Isn't that what you do on July 4th? That's not what you do?
It's America, brother.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So happy July 4th to everyone. I hope you are celebrating safe. And I hope after you listen to this podcast episode, if you are listening to it on July 4th or afterwards, you still have all 10 fingers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We're starting off strong on this episode. And another way to start off strong is to talk about this Big 12 preseason rankings. Let's put it on the screen. If you're listening in audio, I'm going to let you know. The Locked On Podcast Network preseason poll for the Big 12 Conference has Arizona State at 1, the defending champs. Got them voted to go back-to-back here. Kansas State falls in at 2. Texas Tech, with all that money spent, 3. Baylor 4. Cyclones 5. That's your top 5. We can dig into the rest of it later. But there you go on top 5. Both our teams showing up. And Cyclones, they make it to the Big 12 championship game, and dare I say, are they a little disrespected for being only 5th on this one? Or is it because of what they lost? Is it that offensive firepower? What is it, Nick, to makes you think that they only got 5th place? And do you feel that's warranted?
Well, I definitely think there is a level of disrespect, whether it's intentional or not. I mean, I just think that that's kind of the way that it goes. And I think almost everyone in Ames is almost used to it by now, to be completely honest. However, I chose to spin this and look at it a different way. Just to answer your question really quickly, I do think it is largely in part to who we lost. And it's a little bit of a prove-it year for Iowa State. Like, we haven't seen sustained success at the Big 12 championship level really ever for Iowa State. So it's like, do it back-to-back, then we'll start giving you your flowers type of deal. I can respect that, I suppose. But moreover, I looked at this as this is the beginning of Iowa State being genuinely in the conversation. I think that's how I looked at this, because top 5 is great. Top 5 in the rankings is super cool and all of that. But when I got access to like the number of first place votes, the total points, the Minimax rankings and stuff, I'm not going to dive into the exact numbers, but I'll just say there was a clear cutoff from the top 5 to about the middle 4-ish, and then the bottom, I believe it's like 7 or whatever it is. And Iowa State right in that top tier. Okay, that's how I chose to look at this. I believe that there is now a conversation where Iowa State is in the conversation with those big dogs, with those top schools and programs. Is Iowa State favored to win the Big 12 this year? No. Is anyone giving them respect? No. Not at the championship level, but certainly on the level of like, they could be sneaky good. Maybe we shouldn't completely write them off, and I think that's a step in the right direction for Iowa State.
I went on a crossover for Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. Richie Bradshaw for Locked On Arizona State joined me as well, and we were kind of discussing Spencer's Big 12 power rankings, not the actual poll, but his rankings he put out a few weeks ago. And he had Texas Tech winning it all, but it came into the conversation about Iowa State. And he didn't ask Richie the conversation. He asked me about Iowa State, which I thought was hilarious for one. But I did have a little bit of knowledge, if you will, because of all these Farmageddon Fridays. And I dug into the schedule. I had the schedule pulled up when I had the conversation. And I don't know if it was an epiphany, or I don't know if it was just like whatever, but something hit me. And I looked at that schedule and I said this straight up on the conversation. You can check it out. I think it was on Wednesday's or Thursday's episode of Locked On College Football from this past week. If they can get past Kansas State in week 0, and as of right now, I think we can both say it's probably a coin flip. As of right now, I think that game can be a coin flip for either one. But if Iowa State can get past Kansas State, even if they don't in week 0, if you look at the rest of the schedule, say they beat Kansas State week 0, there is, with the news that happened with BYU, with the non-conference schedule that I think is in your favor, Arizona, Cincinnati, Colorado, they're not the same teams they used to be. You could be 8-0 heading into Arizona State, hosting Arizona State in Ames.
Absolutely.
There's a strong chance that you could have and even if you say you lose to Arizona State, the projected team that's supposed to win the Big 12 again, if you beat Kansas State week 0, you might only have one loss in the conference, and that'll put you right back in battling for Dr. Pepper. So I really like your shot for being in the Big 12 if you can get past Kansas State. Now, if that doesn't happen, does the wheels fall off? Because that's exactly where I'm worried about for Kansas State. Does the wheels fall off in week 0 if they don't start off strong?
Well, there's obviously that situation. I think that's something that you got to kind of address if you find yourself on that bridge, cross it then. Obviously going, over the pond and then coming back is going to be its whole thing. We've talked about this. The other side of the coin here that I don't think you specifically touched on is that I really like Iowa State's bye schedule. The way that Iowa State's byes are set up, it's very even throughout the season. You can kind of take a chunk and then you've got a second to redigest, kind of reset, take another chunk, reset, take another chunk. Like, I like the way, and it's kind of completely by chance. It's just, I like it. You're not running 5-6 games and then you've got like 2 on a bye, 2 on a bye, kind of a weird thing or whatever the case is. I know there are some more, I would say, unfavorable bye schedules out there. I like Iowa State's chances. I really do. I've been high on Iowa State all off season long. We've talked about why on the team side, but I think their schedule is really good, especially with the BYU situation. I'd be interested to see if BYU is better or not without Retzloff, but either way, I do like Iowa State a lot. Now, let's move on from Iowa State because I think it's pretty clear that they're unranked at 5. They're going to end the season at 1. Kansas State comes in at 2. Is that disrespect? Because I believe they were tied, I know, for the Big 12 championship odds. It was like plus 410 or something, and there was like 4 people at that. So Kansas State in that conversation for sure, but comes up short of Arizona State. Do you think that's just a product of Arizona State winning it last year?
I don't think so, actually. Look, I think Kansas State has the ability to make it to the Big 12 championship game. I think they have the ability to make not just a appearance in the college ball playoffs, but if they go there, I think they can make a deep run. I think they have a fantastic roster for it. But if you look at what Arizona State's bringing back, if you look at what they did last year, they were one play away from beating Texas to go to the other round in the college football playoffs, and arguably the most exciting game in all of the college football playoffs. I thought that one was the best one. Look, I'll go out and explain mine. I'll pull the curtain back. I voted for Arizona State number 1 to win this one. So actually, the poll is pretty close to what my rankings was. I had Arizona State at 1 and I had Kansas State at 2. And that's kind of where I'm sitting at. I do think those are my predictions. I think that Kansas State makes the Big 12 championship game, but I think they do it with 2 losses in the conference. I don't know if Arizona State gets to 2 losses. I think they might get to 1. Now, if you make it there, it's a completely different story. When you're battling for Dr. Pepper, when you're fighting for all 23 flavors, Nick, you never know what's going to happen. You never know, right? So that I don't think it's disrespect. Actually, I think I'm actually really excited and really proud and much respect to all the other hosts of the Big 12 hosts that gave the credit to Arizona State, because although you lose Cam Scadaboo, that's something you can't replace. He's a special running back. You do bring back some great players like Jordan Tyson, obviously Sam Levitt's there as well, but giving them the respect as the defending champs in the craziest league in college football with the parity from top to bottom. We say it all the time. There's no better college football conference from top to bottom. I think you deserved it. So although I would love to put Kansas State first, and my bias, if I was obviously going to make that ranking, just like you would put Iowa State at 1 if you were playing bias, I think that we did a very good job remaining professional, and that's why you see Arizona at the top. I think this poll is actually quite good. Like, I don't have too many gripes with it. Obviously, to round out that top 5 one more time for the audio folks, Arizona State at 1, Kansas State 2, Texas Tech 3, Baylor at 4, and Cyclones 5. Now, just a little another behind the curtain, Baylor just squeaked above Iowa State for number 4 for the record.
Yes.
And then you had BYU at 6, TCU at 7, Utah at 8, Kansas Jayhawks at 9, and Colorado Buffaloes at 10. Don't have too much concerns there either. Now, obviously, we don't know what BYU is going to be this year with their quarterback conversation. I think if I had any type of concerns just in that 5, I would say maybe move them down 1 or 2 spots, especially because Utah is sitting there at 8. Obviously, their main rival. You just don't know what Utah is. I think Utah is probably the biggest wild card in the Big 12 conference this year.
I would put West Virginia probably in that conversation as well. I think that the Horned Frogs kind of got a little bit of maybe not disrespect, just overlooked. I would like to see maybe TCU slightly higher, but it's like, who do they pass, really? So it is a tough spot for them. Maybe BYU just with that whole situation. But this, I believe, was ranked before everything even came out at all. Nonetheless, very solid ranking from us, I thought. I think this was really pretty much spot on, except for maybe Houston got a little bit of a boost for some reason, potentially. But nonetheless, they're down there outside the top 10, so I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, round up the rest of the Big 12 conference. The Houston Cougars at 11, Oklahoma State 12, West Virginia 13, Cincinnati 14, UCF with Scott Frost returning at 15, and Arizona Wildcats, the other Wildcats, sitting at 16. That's where I had them. I think they're the worst team in the conference right now. I could be wrong. Some people think it's West Virginia with the Rich Rod scenarios. Obviously, Oklahoma State didn't win a single game in the conference last year. And this is why I like this poll, right? We're tuned in every single day. These hosts can run a podcast, your team every day. And you see a team like Oklahoma State, who didn't win a single Big 12 game last year. We have them projected to finish 12th because we know that it's not going to happen again. You know, the parity is going to come into play. You see Utah towards the top 10. You see Oklahoma State at 12th. So I love this where I'm at. You said something before we get to the next segment here. You said something about West Virginia. Many people have them more towards the bottom than the top. You seem to be potentially thinking the other way.
I just think it's a hard team to really nail down because of the amount of turnover. It's really what it comes down to for me. So I'm not going to rank them really low because Rich Rod, very good coach, and what seems to be a pretty high turnover roster from last season. I have a hard time putting them at like 12 or 13 or 14. I think I had them at maybe closer to 10 or something like that. You know, outside the top 5, it wasn't as concise for me because it is like every team could pop off this season. I'm not entirely sure, but I gave West Virginia a little bit of a benefit of the doubt there just because, like, what are they going to do? I just don't know yet. I think they're very unproven. I wouldn't be shocked if they spoil some seasons this year. I would be shocked if they end up at like 8 wins. But like maybe like a Kansas last year, just come out of nowhere, boom, bam, pow, all of a sudden we got a major shakeup in week 11 or whatever it is. Could happen.
If these polls are anything like last year, does the Arizona Wildcats win the Big 12 in 2025?
Are you asking me? No. That's, you can ask the audience that one.
Are we getting too crazy? Are we getting too crazy Big 12s in a row? Arizona State from the bottom. I'm the same way. There's no way. I can't say. I'd be surprised if Brett Brennan keeps his job. I think that's the best thing that you could hope for Arizona, or maybe you can't. I don't know. All right, let's dig into our fun Farmageddon conversations, positional breakdown. We're talking about the secondary. This should be a fun conversation. We'll do that next, right here on Farmageddon Friday. But first, Nick, let's talk about today's sponsor, and that is Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. And that's usually, in my opinion, because of Wi-Fi connection. Whatever. No need to talk about that. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress or ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. You don't have to worry about internet connection if you're right at the game. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to, listen to this, Nick, 60% off with their killer last minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, well, don't worry. Game Time's got you covered with these zone deals. Really like this, by the way. You can pick the best seats in the section you want just for you. you could get it in a nice price, maybe with those 60% off. As we mentioned, with Game Time, the price you pay is the price you pay. What you see is what you pay. No hidden fees. And if you're worried if your plans change, well, with the Game Time guarantee, has your back with cancellation protections and so much more. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, Nick.
Guaranteed.
All right, let's dig into it. Let's have a conversation and let's talk about Farmageddon Friday when it comes to positional breakdowns. We did the offense basically in the month of June. You want to dig into those conversations, you can check out either Locked On Cyclones or Locked On Kansas State. They have them in there. But we're going to dig into the defense first on this one today, and we're going to talk about defensive backs. The secondary. The reason we did that is because you got the free safeties for Freedom Friday for the 4th of July. Usually we start from the bottom, make our way up in the trenches, but I thought that'd be a cool way to do it on the 4th of July today. There's just a lot of fun things with this secondary group for Kansas State, but I want to hear what Iowa State has as well. Iowa State secondary, can they be an interesting group? That's what I really want to know this year. Take me through the cornerbacks. Let's start with the corner side first. What do you think about them? Can they protect, for example, week 0, the size? Can they stop the size of Kansas State's receivers in Dublin, Ireland?
I think that the biggest thing we got to do here when talking about Iowa State secondary is first realize the amount, or I guess the value of guys that Iowa State lost last season. I think it would probably be professional negligence, and I would be risking my job if I didn't mention Bo Freeler last season. One of the, arguably, from the sounds of it, the greatest leader in Iowa State football history. A very, very good, I believe he was a strong safety, but kind of played all over, very quick, made a lot of plays for Iowa State. But realistically, it seemed like he was a leader in that locker room. Obviously, Darian Porter, another guy that was very, very good for Iowa State. Now, I'm not going to reminisce too much on those guys, but I do think it's important to note, because the biggest thing that I am, and I know you asked about the cornerbacks, but I just have to clear this up. The first thing that comes to mind when talking about Iowa State secondary is leadership. And it's unfortunately not right now about how good it is. It's about a question mark. Based on Deion Broomfield's media availability, it was a couple months ago at this point. Really, it was during spring ball, really talking about, like, we're not really sure who's going to be kind of at the top of this leadership for Iowa State. Is it, Marcus Neal? Is it Tayshaun James? Is it Jontez Williams? Like, we're not entirely sure. It's kind of open right now. We're like it's creating this really great competitive environment, which is very good. But that's been the one thing, and it's hard to say, but if I had to pick one area for Iowa State that I had like a question mark of the entire team, it would probably be the secondary. Just because I don't think it's a talent issue, but leadership. And it seems like maybe they're, I hate the word immature, but it seemed like they were kind of alluding to that. And so I want to see them, really kind of fall into the game. And Deion Broomfield did mention, like their summer school that they're doing, football summer school, whatever, teaching players like all the fundamentals, formations. What are you identifying? Where are you lining up? What does that give you advantage in this position? What are you seeing, like, pre-snap motions, all this kind of things, really depth, increasing the depth of knowledge of this secondary. I think that's a great spot to start. And then when you let the secondary loose out there, they can make plays. Iowa State is returning, I believe it's 53%, 8 of the interceptions from last year. I don't have a doubt that they'll be out there and able to play very well. I don't know for sure if they'll be that top 3, top 5 secondary in football. That was kind of Iowa State's thing last year, especially defensively. However, I know I'm rambling here, but I'm trying to get all my points in. I do think that Iowa State's defensive line this year, which we have not talked about, we will, is going to be significantly better. And when they put more pressure on the quarterback, that allows the secondary to not have to cover as long, right? So as a byproduct of not having to cover as long, you can kind of see where the sliders are going to balance out. Maybe the talent isn't quite as there, but they don't have to play as hard. We're kind of at that same level of output, if you will. I do think Iowa State is going to be really solid. I just need to see and find out who is going to be that leader and how are they going to get it done out there on the field, because the secondary, very tough position to play.
Correlation between defensive line, pass rush, making mistakes for the secondary coming hand in hand. So I'm glad you brought that up. Leadership sounds like a big deal, but when you look at who they're bringing to media days and just a little taste, I know you and I are both going to have independent segments coming up at the beginning of next week, kind of previewing media days as we get closer on Tuesday and Wednesday. I think I know on Kansas State, you're going to get a Monday episode for that, kind of talking about it. I'm sure you're going to do something as well. But defensive backs Jeremiah Cooper and defensive back Jontez Williams is showing up to media days. Usually you bring either your seniors or your leaders, either way that usually come into play. Out of the 5 players, 2 of them are defensive backs. Does that make you feel a little bit better about that?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not like super concerned, and it's the same. I think it's the same conversation we had last week. I can't remember when I said this. It was one of those where like, if I had to pick one, it would be the secondary. It's just because the rest of the team is so good. Like that's really what it comes down to. It's not like I think this secondary is going to get cooked every single game. I'm not saying that. It's just that if I had to pick one, it would be that. And it's also like all of those comments were made in spring ball. Let's put some context on that and understand that that's months away from any meaningful football games. So not even fall camp, months away from fall camp. So I'm not concerned about the leadership so much so as I just want to know who it is. I want to know that they've got that ironed out. Like that's my only holdup with this group. I know they'll get it done. I know there'll be somebody out there that's getting the job done and really leading the group. Like that's what it is. But at this moment in time, it just hasn't been announced. There's not like a, hey, this guy, and maybe that'll come out during media day. So be sure to tune in next week and we can cover that.
You don't think they're going to get cooked every single week? What about week 0?
Yeah. Is getting 10 picks considered cooked? I think that's cooking. I think they're going to be doing the cooking.
Oh, okay. I'll leave you at that one, pretending that team is ready to roll. Gotcha. All right. You're next. You got the keys. Let's hear what I got to tell you about the secondary. I'm pretty hyped on them as well, but for different reasons. We'll tell you that next, right here on this Locked On College crossover between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones.
So Iowa State secondary, admittedly an area where I have question marks. It's not the most nailed down position group in my opinion. However, you've been throwing out little nuggets, little comments here, there. I'm finding them under baskets, underneath little tufts of grass, like an Easter egg hunt. I'm putting the pieces together and realizing, is Kansas State's secondary like maybe the strongest position group on the Wildcats? Are they going to completely shut down Iowa State's receiving game, or I guess passing game? Tell me, because it sounds like you're kind of hinting at it.
I don't know if we should go nuggets first. Maybe give you a little snack wrap since we're less than 10 days from the new snack wrap coming back to McDonald's, the revival.
Yes.
Right. Maybe I gave you a snack wrap of appearance. Look, I don't know if I could say the secondary of Kansas State is the best position group, but I can arguably say that the Kansas State secondary is the biggest X factor for the for the Wildcats in Big 12 title chase. I think that's the case. I think the secondary was a roller coaster last year, and I don't think any Kansas State fan can say otherwise. Even with 2 NFL picks, they had a 3rd rounder and a 5th rounder going into the NFL draft last year. Jacob Parrish, Marquise Siegel. They're going to have some big plays where they're at in Tampa Bay and San Francisco. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do. But a youth movement, that's what's here in Kansas State, and that's exciting. What we saw in the Rate Bowl last year, with some of these cornerbacks that came in, like Zayshawn Rich, like Donovan McIntosh, Jack Fabercy, even I think he's going to make some sort of bigger plays, maybe not as much of a bigger role as some of these others, but I really like that type of play from those players against Rutgers. That's going to be the biggest question. Who steps up to replace that NFL talent that they had last year? And is there still NFL talent on this roster as of right now? And I do think there's a few, to be completely honest with you. There's a quarterback room ready for the Big 12 gauntlet. That's a big question. Are they ready? Because this gauntlet's not starting week 5 like it normally does, right? It's starting week 0 against the Cyclones. Can the safeties stabilize the back end? Well, they brought in some players to hopefully do that. And will this young unit decide whether Kansas State wins the conference? The young unit is fun. It's exciting. It's got a fresh feeling to it. But with youth, usually sometimes brings rookie mistakes, right? We've heard that all the time when it comes to a youth movement, especially if we're replacing senior NFL talent that's on the 32 other teams right now in the big league. That's huge. There's major holes to replace Jacob Parrish and Marquise Siegel, one in the cornerback position, one at the safety position. But despite that NFL talent, I think the secondary still struggled last year with communication. They let out some big plays in 2024. That's got to change, and they got to find some ways to fix that. I do think the defensive front, like you mentioned, which I'm excited to talk about that episode in a few weeks here, is loaded. And I think that will help a young secondary with reducing time and coverage. And I think that's where you and I come in the same play. But again, replacing NFL players isn't easy, but the hunger of depth and a young room may finally fix the inconsistencies that we saw last year, Nick.
Oh yeah, no, replacing NFL talent, they're NFL talent for a reason, right? And so you hope you can have that turnover, but it is a difficult thing to do. Not everyone makes it to the league. I'm curious, selfishly, you can preview the entire season if you'd like, but Iowa State will be playing Kansas State. And so I just am personally curious. Iowa State has a slew of receiving options. You've got running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. It's one of the things that I've talked about Iowa State having as a strength this season. At the wide receiver position alone, you've got Chase Sowell, who's standing at 6'4", and then Xavier Townsend, who's not quite that height, but seems to be a utility speed type of player. Guys coming out of the backfield, going to be a lot faster. Those tight ends, humongous, very large humans that are going to have large catch radiuses to bring down the ball. My question to you is, do you think that Kansas State could struggle in one area or the other? Do you know? Or is there a possibility that they're kind of across the board, big and fast, and they'll be able to really kind of play Revis Island across the entire secondary?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see any type of like island type coverage. I think that there's going to be some really good coverage overall, but I don't know if I could just pick one guy to say, yeah, he's going to be able to shut another one down. I just don't know if that's what Kansas State's going to be playing this year. I don't know if that's what we're going to
group
go
defense.
for. Yeah, I think that might happen, but we'll see. Obviously, we'll see in the future what happens. These young players can do so. Zayshawn Rich had a breakout game against Rutgers in the Rape Bowl. He was fearless. He was confident. And that's something we saw from a freshman that had hardly any playing time during the season. And it showed like he was playing all year in that Rape Bowl. That was exciting, knowing that he's most likely going to have a huge, a bigger role, probably right off the bat in Dublin. Then you have two awesome transfers, and which I think awesome is probably the word that is more of an optimistic awesome at one side. And on the other side, you've seen some proven talent. Let's start with the proven talent first. Marion Fortenberry comes over after being a starter, a true freshman starter. Yeah, Marion Fortenberry, good one, right? The Wild Fortenberries at South Alabama, true freshman, full year starter. He picked Kansas State over Houston, highly drived guy. I think he's mature beyond his age from what I've seen and what I've heard from him. He's got some FBS starts. He's got more starts than Rich and another young player on this roster in Donovan McIntosh. But when you talk about McIntosh, who was on the team last year, and then you talk about this other transfer who is not proven because he had some injuries, but he's coming from Oklahoma. He's coming from the Sooners, so he's been in a pretty good program for quite some time. McIntosh is 6'3". He's got length. He's got great flash potential. He flashed that late last season. And then Jaden Rowe is an absolute unit. We've heard some things from a defensive coordinator of Kansas State, how there's the potential that they want to move him to other positions. The linebacking coach are fighting to get him to play in the linebacking position, but he looks like he's going to be a corner, 6'2", 220, but he's got a 4.3 speed. Like, guy's super fast and physical. Health will obviously be a question for Jaden Rowe. If you put all that together and some returning players like Justice James have some experience and steady depth, if he starts his cornerback one early, that could be the question, and that might potentially be it. But I think by mid-season, now obviously that's not a week zero conversation, but by mid-season, I think Fortenberry and Rich could emerge as a top duo, not only just for Kansas State, but the top duo in the Big 12. And something that's really exciting about that, they'll both just be sophomores. And then you got Jaden Rowe rotating heavy if healthy. So I'm excited about the cornerback room. There's just a lot of question marks, but the potential, I think, is through the dang roof.
I have a quick question for you. It's a little bit of a hypothetical. Will Kansas State's secondary be so good that it forces teams to run, or will they come away with a just unbelievable amount of interceptions and pass breakups?
Man, I hope you're right. I mean, that would be a complete. If the secondary is so good that they are just shut down, then Kansas State's probably going 12-0. And we're not talking about can they win the Big 12. We're talking about can they win the college football national championship, because that was one of the biggest problems towards the end of the season last year when the wheels fell off and some of the other things. Even when they were starting 7-1, there were still some secondary issues. And what's crazy is they developed two NFL talent ready players as well. So if they are that good, that's a major improvement for Kansas State's defense next year. And with the offense, which we've talked about all last month, how improved that's been, I don't know if you touch Kansas State. So that's where I'm going to lean there. And I don't know if we should dig too far in the hypotheticals. We're both Big 12 teams. We're not SEC teams talking about this team could beat this team in a certain hypothetical conversation. Last point that I'll make here, and we keep talking about different players coming in with the safety room. I think the safety room is going to be really cool. When you talk about NFL talent, and I kind of let off my segment with, I still think there's some NFL talent on this team. VJ Payne comes to mind. He's a returning leader. He's expected to take a big step next year. I think he has the tools, the skills, the ability, the physique to be an NFL talent player, where we're talking about him taking over Marquise Siegel's role, basically, but probably being a better, higher draft pick than him. Siegel was a 5th round draft pick. It would not shock me one bit if he's a 3rd or 4th round pick or even higher come next year's draft. And then you bring in probably the best leadership ability in the Big 12, bringing Gunnar Maldonado over from Arizona. Another injury concern. He's recovering from ACL, but if healthy, I think he's an all Big 12 caliber leader on this roster. And that's something huge with all the inconsistencies and letting up the big plays. You're bringing in youth with talent, with speed, with size, and then you also add the leadership capability, something that you mentioned could be a concern from Iowa State. I don't think that's going to be a problem for Kansas State in 2025.
Imagine an all-conference leadership team. That would be really cool. Really shout out those guys. They deserve it. It's not a super common trait to be like a super great leader, and I think that's what elevates teams to the next level. Will Kansas State have that? I don't know. When they compare to Iowa State, like Iowa State's just built different. Really, that's what it comes down to. All right, folks, thank you so much for not making this your secondary listen every day, but making this your primary listen every single day, either Locked On Kansas State or Locked On Cyclones or Locked On Podcast Network. You know it, your team every day. Have a good 4th. Stay safe. Enjoy the fireworks from a distance. That's going to do it for today's Locked On College crossover between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones.
Who's got a better name? Is it a Marion Fortenberry or River Peppers? So far, we got all name teams going.
Is our team's the entire all name team?
Might be.